What's going on YouTube? Thanks for tuning into the Rolling Times. Today we're working on this 2004 Ford Explorer with a 4.0 V6. We're going to be doing rear brakes and a wheel bearing. Customer brought it here for rear brakes. He had some noise in the back. We got it jacked up and quickly discovered that the wheel bearing is about to fall off. If you're having any noise in the back, if you should be able to feel this with that much play in the wheel, but this is a pretty common issue for these Explorers. I've seen it on a bunch of them now. But one way to make sure that it is the wheel bearing, if your wheel is on the hub tight and you can shake it back and forth, up and down, it has play in all directions, and you can see in there and the rotor is moving with the wheel. That's going to be an indication that your wheel bearing's shot. These aren't the most fun ones to replace. You do have to pretty much tear the whole thing apart. You have to take the knuckle off the car and press the bearing out, press the hub out, press the bearing out, press the new bearing in, press the new hub in. Sometimes you can get the full assembly already ready to go and just bolt on the car. That is a lot easier, but they are a lot more expensive. Alright, so we're going to start by taking the brakes off of here since we have to do them anyway, and they're going to be in the way for the wheel bearing. But while we're getting the brakes apart, I'm going to go ahead spray some penetrating oil on this upper ball joint nut and bolt, and then the lower one down here. Because none of this stuff ever likes to come apart on these. So in order to get this hub off of here, I'm going to remove the caliper, remove this lower ball joint bolt. Not sure if this is a tie rod or not, but it's basically a tie rod, but on the rear of a car. It doesn't move, it just holds in alignment. And our upper ball joint there. To remove that caliper, 10mm bolts, unless they've been changed, for the slide bolts. Oh, it should come right off.
You didn't even need the screwdriver if you did that. Where do you want me to put this?
Set it somewhere so the hose isn't hanging. So these must be the factory rotors because it still has these keepers on them, but if yours does have these, you can just cut them off. You don't have to put them back on. Like that. There you go. Before you go too far, you want to make sure you can get this off. If it's giving you too much trouble, you can't get it with the impact, you can try heating it up. That may help. If not, you might just have to hold this and get a giant breaker bar. And there's the ebrake shoes, which I also recommend replacing when you're doing this job. Since we're taking this whole knuckle off on this side, we're going to have to disconnect the ebrake cable. We're going to do that now before we start taking stuff apart. There's a little slot here for the cable to slide out of, so you're going to pull that out, and it'll slide out the bottom, and a little bit of persuasion, you can pop that end off. Upper ball joint bolt, 18 millimeter. No wrench needed on the other side. It has a locking bolt. So that came right out. I like to
Put things back where they came from.
start the nut back on there so we can smack it out. Where'd that screwdriver go?
I don't know.
Here. There's our top bolt.
You're gonna drop the caliper.
One eternity later.
Alright, so I think we spent an hour of labor on this upper ball joint alone. The easiest method for separating this is with a pickle fork, but that'll tear the boot on the ball joint and you'll have to replace the ball joint. So what I did, if you have a chisel or something to wedge in between back here, what I used was a long flathead. Took it right up from the bottom here. Right here.
I can't see that.
You can go straight up at it.
I got it.
You can see where it's wedged in there. And then Brandy will show you here. Should take the camera. You're just gonna whack it like that.
Except a lot more.
Right, it's not gonna be that easy because I already had it ready to come out after beating on it for like half an hour.
It was like an hour.
But we did get it apart. We didn't destroy the boot. It doesn't have excessive play in it, but probably wouldn't hurt to replace it anyway. However, we're trying to save this customer as much money as we can, because he thought he was only going to need brakes. I have this tie rod here. Should be the same size. Yep. Alright, there's that. So we went ahead and pushed the axle out of the way and get a flathead in there. Little chisels work too pretty good. It's just hard to hit them in a lot of times because there's no room back here. A couple good whacks. Knock that right out, and then all we have is this bottom bolt here. Alright, on this bottom bolt nut, the nut is a 21 mil. Got an 18 mil for the bolt. Okay, she's tight. Tight like a tiger. We're gonna need some persuasion. Careful not to bend the dust shield like I just started doing, because they're hard to find. You can see how I use the wrench against the control arm to kind of leverage it, so you don't need another person to hold it. Should be loose enough. Good old Ryobi should get her done. Alright, here's your hub. As far as pressing everything out, you're going to need a shop press to do that. I'm going to take it in to work and do it after work tomorrow. If you don't have access to a shop press or don't know how to use one, they are a little bit scary if you don't know what you're doing. I would suggest just take this whole unit to a shop and they'll charge you a couple bucks to press it. Maybe like a half an hour, an hour labor to press everything. But you're still saving a lot of money by getting this off yourself as opposed to having the shop do all this. Not to mention, depending on the shop, they're probably going to bust and break a bunch of other stuff while they're in there, costing you more money. So if you're not comfortable with using a press, you could still do all this and save yourself some money by taking this and the new hub and bearing to a shop. Okay guys, we got the hub back from the shop, or the knuckle I should say, with the new hub and bearing pressed into it. Just to give you a quick rundown because I couldn't film that, when you're pressing it out you want to start by pressing the hub out of the bearing. You'll have to get this laid somehow flat in the press. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Press that hub flange out of there. At that point I took apart all the old ebrake shoes, got all that out of there. Once this hub's out of here, there's a C-clip right here that you'll have to remove. If it's anything like this one, I had to heat it up and dig it out of there. It took a while. It took me a couple hours to get this all done. Once that clip's out of there, then you can actually press the bearing. You push it. Once this flange is out here, you push it from the front out the back. Then you can get your new bearing, push that bearing back in till it stops. Put your C-clip in. Once the C-clip is in, what I would recommend doing is assembling your ebrake hardware, because it's a pain to do once this hub's back in here. We'll show you how to do that then on the other side. But then you press your hub back in and you're good to start assembling it back on the car. Just keep in mind when you're doing this, buy the whole kit with the flange and the new C-clip and the bearing, and definitely have a torch, some penetrating oil and stuff, because it's going to be a lot of fun to get it apart.
What are you doing?
Greasing
What's that?
the axle, just in case I ever have to take this thing apart again. Alright, so I slid the axle through, and you're going to want to start with this lower bolt through the lower control arm. Then that'll kind of hold everything there for you. Dust shield got all bent up. We have this tie rod. Should go in easier than it came out. There, it's bottomed out there. Put your bolt through. Nut. Then we have this upper control arm and ball joint. A little bit of grease goes a long way, especially if some poor sucker has to tear this apart again. You can stop. Okay. All right. That's probably the most difficult part. The rest is just like normal brakes. Don't forget your axle nut. I gotta look up the torque on that. They're usually between 100 and 200 foot-pounds. But you don't want to over torque them or under torque them, or you'll be doing another bearing. Alright, so now going to our brakes. We're gonna want to pop this old pad out. They make a nice tool called a caliper compressor, but if you don't have one of them, you can always use the old brake pad and a big C-clamp.
I want to see that one then.
And use this to turn your caliper piston in. That way we can fit the new brake pads in there. That thing's thin. He wouldn't have made it much longer. Make sure our e-brake works. And we're going to take our star wheel adjuster and turn it out. And that's moving our e-brake shoes out here. You just want a little bit of resistance from them. That way your e-brake works. If you don't adjust them out, then your e-brake either won't work or you have to push it really far in order for it to engage. We have our inside pad here with the prongs. That's gonna clip into the caliper piston if you're lucky. And our outside pad here. Sometimes you have to open these up just a tad. Just gonna clip on there like that. So that fought me a little bit. You want to take the part of the pad that has the notches on both sides, stick that on first, but you're gonna have to pull these slide pins back here so the caliper can actually go where it needs to. Then the top, they just have the notches on the top, so the caliper will just slide on, and we'll get our bolts, 10 mil, put those in there. All right, other than the wheel, that side's pretty much back together. Gotta look up that torque spec. All right, so I looked up that torque spec. It's calling for 203 foot-pounds. Set the torque wrench. And I'm not gonna be able to torque it because it's... So with the e-brake cable here, you want to hook this part around and kind of use this part of the e-brake lever to push that spring back so you can get the cable going back straight here. Then we're going to get this spring hooked on here and just pull the cable housing so we can get the cable up through this slot here and the plastic back in its holder. Over on this side, you can see the e-brake shoes fell apart as well. A couple things to look out for. If you see how bad this rust lip is on this rotor. Now, it's normal to have a little rust lip at the top, but this is taking up over half the braking surface here. So you can see what that's doing to the pad. There's this nasty groove in the top and the bottom, so that's going to make the pads wear out faster. The other thing I want you to take notice is look how much thicker these pads are on this side. Not that they're real great, but they would still be thick enough to pass like a state inspection, minus this minus them falling apart and getting chewed up from the rust slips. But that's how bad that wheel bearing was. It took out that whole inner brake pad like into the backing plate. So just something to take note of and look out for. So our e-brake shoes, this is probably the worst part of this whole job because there's not much room. This hub flange is really in the way. But the good news is these e-brake shoes are pretty simple. We got a top spring here. That's our main spring. On the bottom, we have our star wheel adjuster and a smaller spring. And then on each side, on each shoe, we have these pins and clips that hold the shoes on each side. So the first thing we're going to do is remove this upper spring. You can kind of just get behind it with the flathead. And that is how you pop that off. Now see how easy it is to get into this shoe. I usually don't worry about busting these because I always recommend you get a hardware kit and replace them anyway. Next we have this guy. I'm going to take one screwdriver, push the spring clip down. Take another one, push our pin up to that bigger hole. And now that clip's going to come out. You can see there's our pin. Here's our spring and our star wheel adjuster. Come over to this side, do the same thing. Trust me, it's not going to be this easy for you. And this isn't even the hard part. It's putting it together is the hard part. So what I like to do when I tear this stuff apart is just lay it all down here in the same order, just how I took it apart. That way if I get distracted or have to come back to it, I know exactly how it went. Before we start assembling, you want to grease where the shoe rests here. All these little bumps the shoe's going to contact, so grease those. There's 3 on each side. You're going to want to grease here, our e-brake arm, and the rest here. And then obviously you'll grease your new star wheel adjuster. So we're going to reassemble this opposite of how we took it apart. or reverse I should say. You're going to have a different style clip to put these together. The way these work, that goes through there like that, turns and locks it. Can you turn that, Brandy?
Which part? Behind you?
The pin, no, in front of me.
How?
Use the pliers or something. No. There's a pliers right by your foot.
I think it's turning.
That's enough.
I'll turn it the rest of the way.
Video.
You are videoing.
I couldn't see.
Yeah.
Alright, so you can get it just kind of hooked a little bit like that.
You can
You
turn,
can turn it the rest of the way there. That's the easy one. Side, the knuckle's in the way to reach your finger back through there, and it's kind of hard to get the pin in without dropping it. So you can use a piece of wire and pull it through or something like this. What I'm going to do is just use this to guide it in. Maybe not. Just like that. You want to hand me the new shoe, Brandy? I have a feeling I'm going to be swearing here shortly. Clip.
How the heck does that go on like that? Doesn't matter if it goes this way or this way?
It should go down.
No, give me those needles. Thanks. I can't see. You got it?
Good job, Stink. But we wouldn't have done it without both of us.
Yeah, but I could have did it, but you're in my face with the camera.
Oh, okay. I'm sure.
I could have. I just don't know where you laid everything. So I'm over here trying to find what I need, and I don't even see what I wanted.
Like, I know where I lay everything. Star wheel adjuster, put it in there, and then we have this small spring that's going to hook on these holes here. And if you can do it without cutting the spring, I usually use the side cutters. Get a good hold on it. Not much room to work here. Might use these guys instead. Last, we have our top spring here. I was going to clip in the holes on the top of the shoes. You can see them here. This one.
Oh. Is that right? No, you can't. Your light's too bright.
Fucking junk. Snap on my ass. I'll never do this again. That's probably one of the worst ones I've ever done, but if you stick with it, you'll get it eventually. What I ended up having to do is I got it hooked in on this top side and got it ran underneath here. And I grabbed it by the very edge, close to where the coil of the spring is, with these side cutters. And you just got to pull it and wiggle it into that hole. It probably will catch, but it won't go all the way in, so then you can take the screwdriver and give it a quick tap and knock it the rest of the way in. The other thing you could try is if you had a needle nose vice grip, you could try that, but unless you have a really good one, they usually slip anyway, so that's why I use these. Alright guys, thanks for watching my video. Hopefully it helped you out. If it did help you out, help me out by subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on this video, and drop me a comment. Let me know what you guys are working on. We will continue Friday night uploads at 7 o'clock. What are you wincing about?
I like your hammer.
Yeah, you would like my hammer.
Friday night uploads, 7 o'clock.
Friday night upload, 7 o'clock. In my next video, we're going to be working on this Honda Element behind us here. Customer took it in for an oil change, and they just sent his drain bolt back into the oil pan with an impact or something. So it literally stripped the threads so bad. There's still, I think there's still a little bit of threads in the pan or still on the bolt or something, but the bolt just spins. You can't pry it out, so we're going to be changing the oil pan on that. As always, before ending each video, we would like to thank ABW Auto Glass for sponsoring our channel. If you need any automotive glass, specifically windshields, but he does other glass work too, and you're from the Lancaster, Reading area, please get in contact with Barry for the best prices and quality service.